they put Crysis out again. That game that was supposed to melt PCs like 15 years ago, maybe even more. I don't even remember how long ago it was. They kind of released this oddly. I think the Switch version came out first, right, Derek?
Yeah.
And then they did the PC and big console versions come out at the same time, or were they staggered as well?
No, I think they came out together.
Okay. I know you had grabbed the. So this is like a remaster. I'm gonna call this a remaster. I'm not. It's not. It's not quite on the level of a remake. Not like we had talked about with Tony Hawk. Uh, it's more like a up-resed, higher resolution, better textures, better graphical features. Like they added ray tracing on the PC version, and lighting and stuff like that. But it's more or less the same game. It's, as far as I can tell, just
Mhm.
that game. It's there isn't really anything added to it. Um, Now I know you had, so they had announced that everything was supposed to come out at the same time, but then they something changed and all the other versions got delayed except for the Switch, which came
Yeah.
out. Um, Now, did that come out? That came out at the beginning of September. Is that right?
Yes.
Did that hit
Yes.
that the September 4th date or whatever? Because that's when
Yeah, I
this.
believe that's when the Switch.
Because that's when this. I played the PC version, a little bit of the PC version, and that's actually September 4th, 2020, I believe, is the date that the game actually takes place. So I think they were trying to aim to get it out on that day as like a, hey, this used to be the future, but now it's today kind of thing. Anyway,
Mhm.
um, the PC and the other console versions came out later. So let's talk about that Switch version because that's where you were first disappointed. Um, what was the deal with that? Why did that not impress you very much?
Uh, it was a giant blur, and that's all I remember from the Switch version. Like, they have motion blur in it, and you can turn it off on the consoles,
Yeah.
but you cannot turn it off on the Switch.
Oh, really?
And the Switch just didn't handle it well. They just recently had an update for it, and it seems a little bit better, but not much. Like I wish I could just turn it off completely
Mm-hmm.
because, it's there's a lot of moving, jumping around and like using your powers and stuff, and I
Yeah,
just don't
it's a
think
first person shooter.
yeah, it
You're
just
gonna be moving around a lot.
yeah, but then you get these like real like because of the suit's powers, you have those like real quick movements and stuff you can do if you have like the speed enabled or like
Yeah.
the strength for the jumping and stuff. It just doesn't bode well with the motion blurred.
No.
Again, that could just be me because I hate motion blur in every single game.
Yeah,
Like,
so the PC version you can go in, you can obviously turn all sorts of different stuff off, and motion blur is one of the things that you can turn off. But even then, there is still a little bit of motion blur that's always on. You can see that when you move like the mouse back and forth and stuff. You can
yeah,
see it does blur even if you turn the. So I don't know what setting that is, if it is a setting or if it's just the nature of the engine in the game. I don't know.
yeah,
Um,
but it
so
just
yeah,
like,
that Switch version didn't look very good, but did it play okay? Did it run okay?
yeah, it ran all right. Like the Switch, like in handheld mode, did get a little bit hot. I didn't really check the Switch after I played it because I played a little bit up on the TV2 in dock mode as well to see if it was any better, and it still looked just the same.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it had like it felt like some hits and shots weren't registering. Like it was having issues like that as well. Which from the little bit I did play with this new update, it seems like it fixed.
Mm-hmm.
Because I made it a little bit further, I wasn't running into those kind of issues where I felt like stuff wasn't landing and then just getting overrun.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Um, And then the version came out, and you got that.
Yeah,
How's
I
how was that?
it was a little bit better.
Yeah.
Um, I could turn off the motion blur there, so obviously I didn't have the that blur smudged like mucky kind of look from that I was getting from the Switch.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I was playing through there, and I kind of ran into the same thing. Like they seem to both have the same issues as far as performance wise. With like, it felt like shots weren't connecting. Like even though I was aiming like right at somebody, I wasn't shooting them. So I kind of put it down and was like, I'm gonna wait to see if an update comes to it, because lately a lot of these companies have been pretty good with like getting updates out or getting performance fixes out to stuff. But I still have not heard anything about if there's gonna be a patch or update for the console or PC versions, unlike the
Mm-hmm.
one that the Switch just got. And even in the article about the Switch one, they didn't mention working on an update for that. So
Yeah. Yeah. So I played the PC version. You know, the conventional wisdom is that, well, this is a PC game, so this was the famous can your PC run Crysis game, the game that pushed PC gaming graphics and everything forward a lot. Um,
mhm.
and the reality is, I don't think this game looks and runs great on PC either. Uh, for one, it doesn't look like a modern game. It still doesn't look like it doesn't look anywhere near as good as say something like Doom, Eternal, or
Mm-hmm.
any of like even like Titanfall, the latest first person shooters and stuff like that. Um, and it doesn't run as well as those games either. Like um, I mean, I showed you those screenshots right from
Yeah.
and you could barely even tell the difference between this game turned up, everything turned up, and everything turned down. Um, and the impact on performance, on the other hand, was is insane. Like it goes from like if I turn everything down, I can get like 120, 140 frames per second, no problem. Everything turned up like 30, 40 most of the
And
time.
that's crazy because you have an RTX 2080, right?
Yeah, yeah, RTX 2080 and like a 9770K processor. Um, yeah, it doesn't seem like the amount the performance hit you're taking is justified by the visuals you're getting. Um,
Yeah. It's just
and
crazy
yeah,
too
I kind of
because
felt that way when this game first came out way back then. Like it looked good and there were a lot of cool effects. Like you know, there were a lot of some cool stuff that it did that other games didn't. Like you're shooting and like trees are getting shot down and falling around you and stuff like that. Um,
Mhm.
but that's not really that cool in 2020. That's kind of we've gotten past that. And when you're saying like the suit powers give you super speed and super strength, you know today we expect games to be that super speed. Like when you're
no,
looking
which is
at
crazy because I think you had mentioned it too when we were talking about it a little bit. The game feels very slow as well as far as movement, like
yeah, your
just like
basic
your
movement
normal
in this game
movement.
is so slow. Um, it feels slower than any, even like going back and playing Half Life or the older first person shooters. This game feels super slow, um, unless you activate your suit speed, which is
Mm-hmm.
tied to like an energy meter. So as you're running, you're using that up. Um, and yeah, that was like probably the first thing I noticed was like, where's the run button? Because I'm like walking around this jungle and it's like I'm a slug. Uh,
Yeah, and I don't remember it being that slow because we were talking about it too. Is like I was one of those people that built at that time. I had a computer built for it, I was working with companies to make sure that stuff worked right because SLI had just came out, and we actually blew up my power supply while playing Crysis.
Yeah.
So like I said, this is a game that really sits with me, and I remember it quite well. But I don't remember it being like that slow or like feeling like, well, damn, why am I moving like this?
Yeah.
So it's just kind of weird.
I think I think I have the original PC version of this game that I could probably install and see. Yeah. Uh, I think Crisis Warhead is kind of like the same game, right?
Yeah, I think that was like the
It's like
isn't
the
that like
expansion.
one of the DLC or the expansion for
Yeah,
it?
maybe that's the full game. If I install that, it'll give me the original game. I'm not sure. Yeah, and really, I never really liked this game to begin with. Like going back, every time I tried to play that original version, I got about as far as I always get. Like 3 or 4 times, I got partway up that first opening beach area, and it was just like, I don't. There's nothing here that's really pulling me along. The way that it works with its open world, the way that it gives you quests and doesn't really explain like what you should be doing at any given time, um, never really made sense to me. Uh, you could just fail missions if you don't do them in the right order, but it doesn't really explain what order you're supposed to be doing them in. Um, and yeah, I don't think like the AI holds up, like because you're supposed to be you can go into stealth mode too, where you're invisible like a predator kind of thing, and it just never really feels like it gives you the tools to fully uh, play it as a stealth game. And then once you blow your cover, the enemies just kind of stand there. Sometimes they'll throw grenades, but usually they just stand in one spot, and you can shoot them, or they'll call for reinforcements, and like a jeep will come in with a couple of guys, but it's pretty easy to take it out. Um, it was. I guess it's a lot of, there's definitely a lineage here between Far Cry and Crysis, um, and it feels like a lot of, cause, Crytek did the original Far Cry, and then Crysis is kind of like taking those kind of like dynamic open world ideas and expanding upon it. And you can see
Mm-hmm.
where the DNA is kind of the same, which in the direction the Far Cry series went versus Crysis. Um, there's a lot of that kind of stuff where it's a blending stealth and action, and if you get caught, they call in for reinforcements, and then reinforcements come in and stuff like that. Like that's where that kind of those concepts started from. Um, and yeah, it's just a very early, not very well executed version of that. Um, that I don't think it ever like deserved the praise that it got. Um, and today, it doesn't really deserve the hype around it being a remaster or something like that. Like, we're bringing back Crysis, that game that, can your PC run it? Like that's really all the hype was around that game. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's a strange thing, and I feel like there's a lot of artificial hype built around Crysis that I don't think Crytek as a company ever really earned at all. I don't think any of their games really hit very well.
Yeah.
They were always kind of like pie in the sky concepts, and their engine has always been like it's capable of creating like really fantastic images and stuff like that, but it's always a performance hog, always um, been an issue in that, especially when you bring it over to port it to other platforms. It's always been kind of a it's more about like what it can do rather than whether or not it's actually pulling off what it should be doing. Um, if that makes any sense. But yeah, and these remasters are kind of an example of just kind of like wrapping up Crytek in a nice little bow of like you couldn't even get your pride and joy out there, the remasters out there at a good quality, a good performance, a good all of this stuff, but you still built the hype around it, you know? You still were like, this is Crysis Remastered, man. We're gonna fuck up your PC again. This is what we're gonna do. This is what we do. And then it's like, yeah, but we're smarter now.
For what?
Right? We know the difference between a game that is just like really hitting our hardware versus a game that's just not optimized, just not taking advantage of the hardware that we have, because it's very easy to look in and see that you're barely touching my GPU, but I'm getting, 50 frames per second for some reason at this particular spot in the game. Why? Why is that happening? It's not a problem on my end. Yeah, it's just strange. And I mean, I hope they take the time and they make it what it deserves, like what people deserve the game to be, like at least from a performance standpoint. But based on their track record, I'm going to assume they probably aren't. It's probably going to be what this is for for the life of it. Maybe hopefully some patches to smooth out those console versions, but I doubt there'll be much to like take advantage or better advantage of the PC anyway.
Yeah, and I'll have to agree with that, because like you said, it's been this long and like a Switch one just came out.
Yeah, it's like as far as I could tell, they didn't actually do these in-house. It looks like they farmed them out to other studios, because there's you get the Crytek logo, but then you also get a logo for like a porting studio. So I don't really know which I don't know. Even that kind of drives me a little crazy. Like, why can't you just do it in-house? Like, how much more or less money could it possibly have been to do it in-house? I don't know.
They're busy not fixing Hunt Showdown.
Right. I mean, Hunt Showdown seems to be like, right now, they're somewhat positive game out there, right? It's not like a complete, utter, total mess, at least not on PC. And it had some good word of mouth, but it was never anything I was really interested in.
But let's be honest, you forgot about that till I just mentioned it.
Yeah, because I didn't care about it. I mean, I know there are people that do, though. Like, that's the kind of games that they like to play. Like, those kinds of...
No, I was surprised to see that. I think just lately it got, like, a pretty decent content upgrade, maybe?
Yeah.
There's something, like, maybe early last week I saw an article on something. I was like, oh, I might fire that back up then to see.
Yeah. Yeah, in terms of, like I said, in terms of Crytek, it seems to be, out of everything that, all the news and releases and stuff that comes out that has Crytek's name attached to it, Hunt Showdown seemed to have somewhat moderate enthusiasm, which is about as good as you can get with Crytek over the last few years anyway. It's been all like, oh, they're going bankrupt. They're suing Amazon because they switched their, or well, maybe it was Amazon too, but what's the Star Citizen, because they switched game engines. They were using Crytek, and then they switched over to Amazon's Lumberyard, which is like a version of Crytek, but not one that they pay Crytek directly for. So it's just been a bad I'd say half a decade at least for Crytek.
Yeah. Blimey.
Anyway, that's Crysis Remaster or What is it actually called? It's not Crysis.
Crysis Remastered.
Is that what
Reheated.
Yeah, Crysis Max. No, it's just called Crysis.
Crysis warmed back up again.
Yeah, Crysis. Meh. Crisis Disaster. I think that's what I was gonna go with.
Always sucked anyway.
Maximum disappointment.
Yeah.
There you go. That's my take on it.
Can your computer run away from Crysis?
Crysis 2 and 3 were always better anyway. People just gave them shit because they.
I like Crysis 2. Crysis 2 was cool, and it was linear. It wasn't like they didn't try to make this a big open world that it wasn't really worth it. It was more straightforward, and it was a fine first-person shooter. I never really played 3, but I liked 2.
I think they got a lot of flack probably because they had an eye on lesser platforms, and I don't think the people that liked the original for the specs liked that.
Yeah, they wanted to make money and.
Yeah.
All right, so that's Crysis Remaster. That's on PC, PS4, Xbox One, and Switch.
Yep.
Maybe if you really wanna, it looks like the PC version is the way to go. But hopefully keep your eye out for any updates or patches for those console versions. But it doesn't really seem like those are the best way to go right now.
Yep.
All right. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to see more. Check out voxelvoice.com for all of our great content, and consider supporting us on Patreon to keep our content ad-free and independent.